Okay, so you should be seeing my screen now, and I will get the PowerPoint up. So thank you all so much for being here. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. My name is Laura Koval. I'm the owner of Able Veg. So this is my baby. And this company has changed so many gardens and created so many new gardeners. And I'm so excited for you all to be here and so excited for you all to be able to start your seeds. Very, very cool thing to be able to do, a very freeing thing to be able to do. And it opens up a whole new world of vegetable gardening. So with that, let's get started with our Starting Vegetable Seeds Indoors class tonight. A little bit about Able Veg if you don't know anything about us. We do new vegetable garden planning. We do garden design. We have raised bed kits that we have shipped all over the place. And we also do one-on-one consultations. If you're having trouble in your garden, you'll get one of our point people assigned to you. You can do it virtually. If you happen to be in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, we can meet with you in person. But our goal is that we give you the one-on-one attention that you need to be successful. So we do all kinds of things. If you enjoy this class, we definitely have more of them coming up. So be sure to check. I think the only two we have sold out. We have one that's almost sold out that's growing edible plants indoors. And then we have one other sold out that is vegetable gardening in containers, but we added a second class. So if you are interested in any of those, you can go to our Facebook page or you can go to Eventbrite and find us there. And enough about the boring company stuff. A little bit about me. This is a picture of my garden. This would have been spring, late spring, early summer probably. And this year, my garden was actually, our test garden was featured in the Tulsa Master Gardener Garden Tour. I've been a member of the Tulsa Master Gardeners since 2016. I've been a professional teacher and presenter for a number of years now, and I'm a lifelong gardener. So this is definitely my passion, and vegetable gardening and food gardening is my favorite thing. Jumping into our material now. So why are you here, right? Why are we starting from seed? Well, the biggest thing is you can plant exactly what you want. When you go into a garden center, you're kind of at the mercy of what they have as far as transplants or seedlings go. But if you can start your own seeds, then that opens the door to thousands and thousands of varieties of different things you can plant. You can find more unique varieties. We're used to seeing certain types of tomatoes and certain types of peppers. But again, you'll really open up the world of what you can actually grow. I also love to grow loofah plants, the sponges. I love to grow Chinese long beans. So there are certain things that we don't usually find in store shelves that you can get once you start your own seeds. Save money. Sometimes the initial setup can cost you a little bit, but over time you will definitely recoup that money. If you're paying $3 for a whole package of seeds, and you can only buy one transplant for $3, then that means you'll pretty immediately see an impact. And the last thing is control disease. This should probably be broadened to control what's going into your garden. If you're an organic gardener, you can start your seedlings organically. I have brought transplants into my garden that have brought disease from garden centers before, and now that's in my soil and I'm having to deal with that. So you can keep your garden at its max as far as the health of your soil and health of your plants go. So what is great to start from seed? So there's lots and lots of options here. A lot of them are going to be your early crops. So these are things, again, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We are a zone 7B. Right now I have some of my early crops started inside. I'm trying to put off and wait because I always want to put my tomatoes in the ground or in the greenhouse too early and then they get out of hand. But your early crops can start going in right now. So these are your broccoli and cauliflower, cabbages, some of your lettuce and leafy greens, Brussels sprouts, and then also your summer crops, which we in 7B will be waiting a little longer for. If you are further south than we are, you'll be starting a little earlier. And we'll talk a little bit about how to make that determination too, guys. Summer crops are tomatoes and peppers, some herbs, pumpkins, that kind of thing. Most vegetables can be started from seed. So don't feel like you need to be worried that, oh shoot, did I get something that, isn't really going to do well? Because you should be able to. So you can be pretty confident that no matter what you can. There are a couple exceptions. I started strawberries from seed once. Once was enough. that was a hassle. Won't do it again. Onions can be a little cumbersome because you can start your seeds really, really early and then they bulb out. Then you have to kind of care them a little bit. Then you have to transplant them. But for the most part, most of your vegetables can be started from your bank of seeds. Now here's a list of seeds to direct sow. I think that this is important for the sake of this class, because these are things that you don't necessarily need to start in your greenhouse. Most of us are a little bit limited on space, some of us are not, but these you can put directly in the ground. Notably here, the first section says root vegetables. Root vegetables do not like to be transplanted. These are the ones, if you start them from seed, you might get them to limp along, but they much prefer to be direct sown. Another opportunity here, guys, to let you know and remind you too, you will have access to this presentation, so you'll be able to go back and take notes on some of these slides. Next up is leafy greens, lettuce, kale, and chard. I usually do start some of mine indoors just because I'm excited to get them going. So I'll start them growing inside and then move them outside. But if I have some gaps and want to put in some more, you can definitely direct sow those. Next category is squash. Things like pumpkins and zucchini, spaghetti squash, they don't like being started and then moved to another location. So you can really save time by putting those directly in the ground. And then a few others, okra, peas, beans, corn. You'll notice here in the other section, we have a lot of larger seeds. These are just really good. They have essentially armor on them. So they're really good about being able to start outside. So you can save some space by putting those directly in the ground. Here's the big question. When do I start my seeds? And this is going to be a little bit different for all of us. In here in Oklahoma, our local extension service here is the Tulsa Master Gardeners and the extension through OSU. They put out a garden planning guide. Now this can be very helpful. I'll go through a couple different kinds of garden planning guides so you can see. You can find these on a lot of places on the internet. One of the things and one of the reasons I don't just teach, well, heck, just, go to a guide, just go find a guide. Because sometimes these dates aren't exact. In Oklahoma, we get very cold and we get very hot, which means that some springs are very cool, chilly springs. Last summer just about scorched us all to death. So if you can start to look at your weather forecast and figure out, okay, I know this is my window, instead of just saying, I've got to put this in the ground on the 10th of so-and-so month, you're going to be better educated and have a better estimated date for your seed starting. This is another example. This one is from the Farmer's Almanac. You can put in your location and it'll give you a date of when to start seeds indoors, start outdoors. Again, just make sure to double check. And definitely if you're going on a blog or something similar where you don't know if it's been fact checked, you want to be sure that you have good information. This is what the Farmer's Almanac used to have. And I understand this is very tiny, especially for those of you who are watching on a smaller device. But the idea here is they used to have this great bar graph, and the blue bar graph or blue bars were when you could sow indoors, gave you that window. Green were when to put them outdoors, and the orange ones are when to harvest. So this was a really nice visual representation. They've since gone away from this and instead go to this one here. They have based on frost dates and moon dates. So it's a little bit different. The good news is I'm going to send you this tomorrow, which is our big list of plants and when they like to be sown outside. So you can view this on your computer and then you can say, okay, well, I know if my first frost date is on X date, then I need 8 to 10 weeks before I put it outside. So that should be much more helpful and also make you a little more intuitive. You want to get to the point where you're not dependent on these planting sheets. You want to get to the point where you know your plants well enough that you can confidently say, okay, I know this is the time of year that I get my peppers or tomatoes or anything else started. I'm also going to send you this handy chart. So this chart allows you to fill it in and make your own bar graph of what month and what day you should be going ahead and starting your seeds inside and planting them outdoors. I have mine. I think I have 2 little boys that of course I'm trying to get them into gardening. I think I may have kind of sort of sold one, but I'm going to have them help me with this chart this year, help me color it in, and then they can determine it too. So do your homework. You are going to have such better luck if you have all of your own resources put together. Good. I'm glad everyone is saying that's helpful. Those tools should be really helpful. I rely on my own, right? I made my little bar graph, and then I have duplicate bar graphs because I'm one of those list people who always lists things and loves having a series of lists. So here we're going to move into understanding the different types of seeds that you can get. Once you start getting into seed starting, you're going to start noticing that there's lots of different catchphrases out there. And you notice here, these are called Job's tears, these pretty little seeds I have. They're actually an ancient grain, but I make them into jewelry. I have my guy drill holes in them, and so they're hard enough they can be little beads. That is an example of an heirloom seed. Now, it's worth noting, because this term is thrown around quite a bit. There is no single definitive one definition of what an heirloom seed is. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not helpful, but just know there's nothing regulating that. So I could take whatever seeds I wanted and kind of smack that on there. So you want to be sure you're getting what you're looking for. In general, I like this definition that heirloom plants are old-time varieties that are saved and handed down through multiple generations of families. So these are older seeds. These are seeds that you are going to have, perhaps have a lot of history on, which is very cool. A lot of the heirloom seed sites especially will try to give you some of the backstory, where they got them from, what family they got them from, where they come from in the world. They're very cool. These can also contain nutrients not found in hybrid varieties. We'll talk about them in a minute, and often have more flavor, and they can add interest to your garden. Breaking that down a little bit, we generally go to the grocery store and we have a couple kinds of tomatoes. And when you look at them, they're all about the same. And it, of course, varies a little bit depending on where you are. But if you have a purple tomato, it's going to have a different nutrient profile than that red tomato. We talk in school about eating the whole rainbow of vegetables on your plate. That's because different nutrients are in different vegetables. This is also the same for carrots, for different greens that are maybe not green, that are red. They often have more flavor or better flavor too. So these are often kept and passed down because they're absolutely delicious. So sometimes you can find really different flavor profiles. And they also add interest to your garden. I definitely do more traditional plants that I know are going to produce well, but the heirlooms are the cool ones for me because they look so different. They look beautiful on your plate. If you're a cook, you can slice up these gorgeous colors and they look amazing. So another pro to an heirloom seed. So I have a question here. Are heirloom seeds more expensive? That's going to vary a little bit. It depends more on the company you buy from and the type of heirloom seed you're getting. Some of them are just harder to produce than others. Next, we're moving into hybrid seeds. So hybrid seeds are plants that are created by crossing two selected varieties. This happens in nature often. If you ever see flowers that have varying colors, that's because they've cross-pollinated, and their seeds then have the DNA from those two varieties. So flowers can come into different colors then and blossom differently than one parent plant or the other. This sometimes results in vigorous plants that yield more than heirlooms, may have better pest or disease resistance. The idea here is you can take something that maybe has resistance to a certain kind of I'm trying to think of tomato diseases. There's so many, but some kind of a mildew disease, a fungal disease. One plant might not have the best flavor, but it has really good resistance to the disease. So then you can cross it with a plant that has better flavor and get a better end product. Hybrids make large-scale commercial production and distribution possible. So when you see farmers buying a lot of these, this is because it gets costs down and makes things potentially more shippable and less labor intensive. So it's their way of trying to get us a good, consistent product and of making it so that it's still affordable by all of us. Next up, we're talking about treated versus untreated seeds. So treated seeds refer to seeds that have been treated with some sort of a chemical. This can be organic or inorganic. It's typically antimicrobial or fungicidal prior to planting. So this is actually done to the seed itself. The treatment is for the grower's advantage and can result in more accurate placement. Pelleting, if you've ever seen seeds that look like they almost have a little candy coating on them, that's a pelleted seed. They can also reduce dormancy potential and help them germinate more quickly. Some seeds are really prone to different molds, mildews, funguses. Some of them have really thin shells, so they're prone to damage. Sometimes with things like carrots, the seeds are so tiny that you can accidentally drop 100 of them in one row and be thinning the heck out of them. So this can make it much easier. Seed treatments can also be more environmentally friendly because if you do have a plant that is getting those fungal diseases, instead of spraying the whole area with something that's antifungal, just the seed is treated and you can get better germination rates. Next up is genetically modified seeds. So these are different than hybrid seeds. These are not the same. These are plants that have had their genetic makeup altered and exhibit traits that are not naturally theirs. I will point out this does also happen sometimes in nature. There's a fungal, I think it's fungal, it might be bacterial, disease that infects corn, and it's considered a delicacy. It makes it really tasty. It looks really weird, but it's actually changing the genetics of that plant. So it does happen in nature. Generally, we're referring to the genes that are copied from one organism into the genetics code of another organism. And this is done by people. Is when we're talking vegetable seeds, it's generally done in a lab. These are designed to make the plant more resistant to rain or drought, maybe to pests. Sometimes it's to add vitamins for places in the world where people have common deficiencies. There's a type of rice that's been enriched. So this actually changes the plant. Now, the one thing, I have not seen any GMO seeds in stores as of yet for home growers. I volunteer on a farm. They do buy BT corn there, and you actually have to sign a waiver that you won't reproduce it on your own because they spend millions of dollars making this genetically modified seed, and it's more labor intensive. So this isn't something, it's great if you go to the garden center and it has a label and it says non-GMO, that's great. As of right now, going into this year, I have yet to see one on the shelves. That might change over time, but as of right now, not necessarily something that we as home growers would be looking for. And it looks like we have a question. All right, Risha, I hope I'm saying that right. Says, if I saved seeds from Awesome Plant 2 summers ago, can I start them this year? Or is that too long between saving and using? Yeah, they should still be viable. Usually at least 3 years for seeds, as long as they've been kept dry and out of direct sunlight. So you can definitely try them. I would. I've had tomato seeds that I kind of lost in the bottom of my pile and got to germinate like 12 years later. So definitely possible. Next up in our seed terminology is stratification and scarification. If you are a person that starts getting into medicinal plants, so medicinal herbs, flowers, you're going to see a little bit more of this. Most home vegetable varieties have been bred so that they're a little easier to grow. Stratification and scarification occur naturally. So a lot of seeds out in nature, this occurs every single year. These are when seeds that have tough outer shells stay outdoors. They're generally large seeds with hard outer shells. Right now I'm soaking some peas because they have hard outer shells, but that's not necessary for peas. It is necessary for moringa. If you're into medicinal plants, moringa is right up there. You got to soak those gigantic seeds for like 6 days to get them to crack open. In nature, animals might scarify the seed by eating them and then digesting them. It can also happen in cold, frosty weather when the seeds expand and then contract. It helps crack that coating, almost like if you leave a terracotta pot outside, it helps to break out that outer shell. You'll see that there are some seeds out there that say they have to be refrigerated. Bulbs, if you're planting tulip bulbs, then they need to be below a certain temperature before they'll bloom the next year. Again, for most of us, I think I scrape the cover with a tiny bit of sandpaper for my sandpaper for butterfly pea flowers when I plant them. That's the only one aside from the moringa that I currently have done. All that tech stuff said, now you get to go do the fun part where you're selecting your varieties. So considering all of the previous factors, determine which ones are right for you, what appeals to you. You can look at the earliness or average number of days to maturity. You can look at disease resistance. If you know that you get some kind of powdery mildew or rust, there's definitely some that will hold up to disease better. And so think of anything that you've experienced that you might be able to use less pesticides or chemicals because you just have a plant that's naturally able to resist those pests or diseases. Here we're going to go through a seed packet and read through it. This is a little packet of Tigrella tomatoes. These are fun little, about golf ball, ping pong ball sized tomatoes. They're very pretty, very tasty, really good for salads. When you look at seeds, you will see certain information on each package. You're going to see the seed name, obviously. This one happens to have a price, some don't. And it also has the number of seeds, either represented by the number of seeds. It'll say approximately 10 seeds, approximately 20 seeds. This one is 140 milligrams. For tomato seeds, I would guess that's probably 30-ish seeds. I know that because I've bought these in bulk and I've had to know that. You might want to pay a little attention to it because I don't know if you all have ever experienced this, but I have bought some packages of seeds and haven't paid attention to it. And they send me like 5 seeds and it's the same price as other packages where you're getting a lot more. Some of that, of course, it might just be harder to produce and I can respect that. But you want to know what you're getting. You don't want to get home and be disappointed. Now, the back of this seed packet is awesome. This one has a lot of information. Some of them don't as much, and some seed companies put most of this information on their website. So if you don't see it on the packet in the store, I even saw, I can't remember what brand it was, but they have QR codes now. So when you're in the store, you can scan it and get all kinds of information on that seed. This one here talks about the tomato, has a good flavor, goes through, yields are high even in cool summers. Uncommon to see that much information, but can be very helpful. Biggest thing here, so look at this table in the middle. It says here the type, which is a tender annual. Tender implies that it will be killed by even a light frost. Annual implies that it'll last for 1 year. If you see hardy, then that means that it will withstand a little bit of a frost. If you see perennial, then you have a plant that will come back year after year. It'll give you the planting depth. I don't go out there and plant with a ruler necessarily, but I do pay attention to this because there are some seeds that basically like being sprinkled along the surface. There are some that want 0 exposure to light and have to stay moist, so need to be down further in the soil. So pay attention to that. The next one here is the thin 2. Usually you'll see this represented as space between plants or plant spacing, but this is telling you how far apart each plant has to be. Important when you're starting your seeds, right? Because you want to be sure that you're not packing them in too close together so that your beautifully started seeds then don't thrive during your season. It'll tell you sun or shade. And the height is important here, you all, especially when it comes to tomatoes, 8 to 10 feet in one season. Make sure you're planning for appropriate staking, appropriate caging, appropriate support for your plants. Next is your maturity, 55 to 65 days. Very important note here. This is the theory that if you put one of these seeds in the ground today, you would see your first fruit within 55 to 65 days. This is generally represented as if you had ideal conditions. Most of us don't live in areas where you have ideal conditions for 55 to 65 days. It's just not that predictable. Make sure you tack on some time onto that and be a little patient because oftentimes you'll need a little bit more time. This one tells you when to plant after the danger of frost, though we already knew it was tender, so you would want to put it out there after the frost. And this one gives you some insight as to when to start indoors, which we can do the math because we have our charts, right? So we know if you put your calendar down, you can count back 55 to 65 days of your planting date. One other thing of note here, I don't know, maybe some of you who are participating from Canada can verify this, but I think it's the same. In the United States, your seeds have to have a packed for and or a sell by date. That's denoted here on the bottom. This is important because you want to be sure you're getting seeds for the right year. If you get them a couple years old, you're going to get a lower germination rate. And one more note, I always going back here, one. You see I wrote 2014 on there in big letters. I want to be sure that I know exactly when I got them, so I can try to use those up first. All right, Rebecca asked, this is a great question. Are the 6 to 8 weeks part of the 55 to 65 days to maturity? In this case, yes, Rebecca. It's a little duplicative. And this is why I'm so big on having you all understand just being able to plot the math behind it, because they're not exactly the same, right? 6 to 8 weeks is not exactly the same, but you'll be able to extrapolate exactly when to plant them. All right, moving on now. So now we've picked our seeds. So now we're trying to figure out how to grow them. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple different sets of lights. So here I have a note, regular fluorescent versus fluorescent grow lights. Similar in shape, not exactly the same thing. A regular fluorescent light, like one you would go to Home Depot or a hardware store and buy for your garage, they will start your seeds. If you're just looking to sprout your seeds and get them off the ground a little bit early, they will work. Please don't feel like you have to go out and buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars of equipment to do this. You absolutely don't. The only thing with regular fluorescent lights is they might scorch because you have to put them right onto your plants and they get kind of hot. So anything any light that's not in the right wavelengths aren't going to be absorbed by your plants. So their light is going to be not as high quality. If you take my growing edible plants indoors class, we talk a lot about lighting. Very, very important if you're wanting to get plants to maturity, less so if you're just seed starting. Fluorescent grow lights are nice because they can cover a large surface area. In the United States right now, we've seen the cannabis trend open up a lot of market for these. It's a lot cheaper to get them now. When I first got mine 15 years ago, my fixtures, I think, were $200 a piece, and now I could probably get the same fixture for about $65. So they don't have to be super pricey, but fluorescent grow lights are great because you can get them in a bigger surface area size and they're affordable. They last a long time and they're really efficient. They don't use much electricity. The cons to these guys, they're not ideal for flowering and vegetative phases, but for most of us vegetable gardeners, you don't want your plants flowering before you put them outside. You want them just working on their roots and want them to work on their growth. So it's actually not too much of a con when you're just thinking about seed starting. Here's my little setup that I have. And I'm trying to think, I think last year I had like 180 plants I did in this guy, something like that. I start mine in little solo cups. I don't do anything expensive. My little greenhouse here came with the shelves, and I think it was maybe $30, $35. And then I do have now 3 fluorescent fixtures. So those just go right inside. You'll notice that the cups are in trays. That's because you want good drainage. We're going to talk more about that. But this is my setup. It's not very expensive. And I start a lot of seeds. Most of you don't have, I don't even know, we're up to something crazy like 20 raised beds or something. Most of you don't have that, so you won't need that much space. So don't feel like you have to go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff. This is another example. This was in our old house. I am originally from Denver, Colorado. We had a basement there, and so I kept my plants in the basement. You'll notice here too, I have these domes. If you look at the dome on the top right and you see how much moisture is in there, that's too much moisture and can lead to some plant diseases that we're going to talk about in a minute. So just keep that little visual in mind. But this is the same thing. It's garage shelving, hung my lights with some zip ties, put my plants in these little seed starting trays. Now the other type of light, you can see here, these are fluorescent. The other type of lights are LEDs. If I was to replace all of mine, I would probably go the LED route. These are more of the newer light technology, and they're able to produce more light per watt. So it makes them very energy efficient, and they work at a little bit of a cooler temperature. The lowest power cost of all grow light types for sure with LEDs. They are very long lasting and generally have a higher light production. Higher quality ones are going to have higher quality light, but again, we're just seed starting, so it's a little bit different. The cons, it can be a larger investment. They're generally a little bit more expensive. And then this one notes too, it does not effectively help in the flowering phase, but that's not what we're going to be going for. All right, and I see we have a question here from Rebecca. She says, do you poke holes in the solo cups and how many seeds in each cup? Yes, I poke a few holes in the solo cups, and I usually will put 3 to 4 seeds in there and then just thin them as they grow in. So I'm sure at least one of them will come up. Here's an example. If you're just wanting to start, say 5, 10 plants, I have this little clip light on some of my indoor herb plants. I just have it clipped to this chair that my plants live on. It works great. It was a $20 fixture. They're bendable, so you can put them right up by the plants. Again, don't feel like you have to spend a bunch of money on your lights. Next up, now that you have your setup, you're actually going to plant your seeds. So with planting your seeds, we've already talked about, you want to be sure they're going in the ground at the appropriate time. Plant them in seed trays, plastic pots, soil blocks, peat pots. They have those compostable pots. Any of those will work fine. I use the solo cups because they're affordable and because I can recycle them when I'm done, and they're easy to clean if I wanted to. The Jiffy pots can be nice. I have bought some off-brand compostable pots that did not compost very well. I also bottom water, meaning that my soil stays damp in my cups, but once the plants sprout, I only water from the bottom so that the roots reach down towards the hole, so I get a good root system going. The Jiffy pots, if you just set them in water, will kind of fall apart. So you'll have to be more careful about watering more frequently. If you have reusable containers and you notice any sign of disease, make sure that you are sterilizing them between uses. If you have solo cups, you can just recycle them. But if you have a seed tray that you're reusing, make sure that you're sterilizing it just to be sure you're not carrying on that disease into multiple generations of plants. Once you have your seeds planted, there's a couple important factors here. And actually, I'm just realizing, okay, I think we're missing a slide here, but this is going to be, you guys will get this. So the other thing to consider when you're starting your seeds is the soil that you're using. You need to get some kind of a seed starting mix. It's not very expensive, but it's an entirely different texture. So get seed starting mix for your plants. With my cups, since they're a little bigger and I can leave them till the plants are more mature, I'll generally fill my solo cup about 2/3 of the way with a good quality potting mix, and then put a couple inches of seed starting mix on top of it. That way, the seed starting mix is there for that little seed. It's really light and fluffy, so those tiny roots can get through there, and it's good at holding moisture. And then once the roots get a little bit bigger, they'll go down into that nutrient-rich potting soil, so I won't have to transplant them as often. So be careful what soil you're getting. We've had people who have bought from AbleVeg these $10,000 custom beds, and then they want to get the cheapest soil. Just don't do it. It's the building block of everything you're going to do. So make sure you're getting a seed starting mix and make sure that it's something that is a pretty good quality. Now you have your seeds planted. A few things to consider. First is humidity. Remember I pointed out that dome that had all of that condensation on it? That's too much moisture. If it looks like it's a little rain cloud, then add some ventilation. Otherwise, it can invite disease and fungal growth and mold growth. In addition to that, have some air movement. It doesn't have to be a lot, but some people will put in their little greenhouse a little fan, and that will be enough to move the air around so that it's not getting stagnant. Next thing is light requirements. 18 hours is optimal. This is why we rarely have success planting vegetable seeds if they are in a sunny window. We have shorter days in the winter, and that means you're not getting anywhere near that 18 hours. Your lights should be really close to the surface of the soil or your little seedlings, a couple inches above, so you can be sure they're not going to grow up in there and get scorched, but they're getting as much of that light as they can. If you have them in a sunny window or under a grow light, make sure to turn them occasionally, move your containers around so they don't get lopsided. Donna asked, do you have to have your shelf in a greenhouse? Nope, you sure don't. As long as you have a fixture with which to hang your light, you don't have to have any shelving. A few other growing considerations. We just talked about that light distance from plants and why a sunny window is probably not enough. Keep in mind, as your wattage increases, the distance from plants should also increase. If you go for it and you think I might want to actually get something to flower, force flower, then you might need to get a more powerful light and it's going to be hotter. So make sure you're not scorching your little plants. Make sure wherever your greenhouse is, you're paying attention to your temperature. Most seeds are going to sprout well between 65 and about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. That means if it's really cold next to a wintry window, you might not get your seeds to sprout. On that chart that I'm going to provide for all of you, that resource, it will have what plants will grow at what temperatures or which seeds will sprout. Cooler season ones will sprout when the soil is a little cooler. Warmer season ones will sprout when it's warmer. Your grow light might add heat. And if you know it's chilly, you can get these little heat mats. They're pretty inexpensive to put under your trays, and that can help germination. Make sure your plants are watered in your growing environment. We know this, if your soil dries out completely and that little seed opens, then you've lost your plant because it will die right away. So make sure you're keeping consistent moisture with that circulation in mind. With fertilizer, check your seed starting mix, check your potting soil, see what kind of nutrients it has in it. They do sell sterilized soil specifically for greenhouse growers so they can customize their fertilization. Most of the time, they're going to have the right amount of fertilizer to start your seeds, but just double check. Once your seeds sprout, the temperature generally around 70 degrees is going to be good across the board. If you have an electric heat mat, unless it's a very cold area, make sure to remove it once your seeds have sprouted. And then keep in mind sometimes the different types of light, different temperatures can trigger flowering and flavor. If you are moving into growing herbs for flowers, you worry about that a little bit more. Lavender, you want certain temperatures and at certain growth stages to get the best flowers. For most of us, for vegetable gardening, it's not going to be that big a deal. And then again, just your ambient air temperature, 65 to 75 degrees is going to be about ideal. However, once your seeds sprout, it might stunt them a little if it's too cool, but you're still going to get some growth as long as it's above freezing. All right, so we talked about the one in the upper right here with the condensation issue. I included this again because if you look down at the bottom, you'll see kind of a green hue to the top of the soil. That's because I had too much moisture. That's kind of the mold or fungus that you see growing. It can lead to disease sometimes it's harmless, but again, just something to pay attention to. Amanda asked, is there a certain soil and seed starter brand you recommend? So Amanda, a lot of this is going to be a little bit regional. I will throw a shout out to Miracle-Gro. They make the most consistent product, I think. I also like ProMix and Lambert, which can be a little harder to come by. ProMix for my Canadian participants is a Canadian brand, so you probably have better access to it. I do have a local brand here in Tulsa that I like, but there are lots of brands out there. If you're unfamiliar, my rule of thumb is always don't go with the cheapest and just read some online reviews. You'll see pretty quickly, even if you're at the garden center and you just Google, hey, is this brand any good? You'll get some pretty honest reviews on if people have had good luck with it. Happy Frog is another one that's pretty widely available. Coco Loco is a good one. And so those are good brands too. And the seeds, as far as the soil and seed starter, you can mix and match between brands. You just want to be sure you know what you're getting. Here's an example of, this is a ground cherry plant. For those of you who aren't familiar, ground cherries are a husked tomato, actually, kind of a similar idea to a tomatillo. They're much sweeter though. They have kind of a cherry tomato blend mix, but these little guys were in the same tray and planted at the same time, but the one on the left had more access to light. The one on the right got pushed out to the side. And as you can imagine, then the bigger plants start to shade the outer plants. So that's why I was saying, make sure you're moving things around in your greenhouse. Common seed starting issues. The first one is damping off. This is a fungus. What will happen is you'll see your plants will start to grow. It almost always happens when they're very tiny. Then you'll go look at them and it almost will look like someone pinched them at the root, at the base of the stem. It'll be kind of brown and it'll just start falling over. You want to sterilize your containers and then promote good drainage, promote good circulation. It'll help you to eliminate the fungus. The next one is plants become leggy. This is when they get really, really big and tall and they have just those 2 initial sets of leaves or the next 2, so they'll have 4 leaves and they don't do anything else. This is because they're not getting enough light. So that means that you need to either put them closer to your grow light or probably at this point get a grow light in general. The next one is seeds won't germinate. This is the one where you have to do a little troubleshooting. Could it be that your seeds got wet or got too hot or were directly in the sun? Could it be that it's the wrong soil temperature? Did you happen to get a seed that likes cool soil? Your soil's at 85 degrees, so it's just not wanting to germinate. Could it be that you're needing to scarify or stratify your seeds a little bit? This is where you do some research. Just say, my carrot seeds won't germinate. What can I do? Interesting fact about carrot seeds and some peppers too, it can be 3 weeks before they emerge. So sometimes what happens is people assume they're not germinating and they go double sow, then all of them come up. So make sure you're looking at that as well. And the last one is tiny sprouts stop growing. This is almost always going to be a fertilization issue. If you don't have enough nitrogen, for example, in your soil, you won't get any above ground leafy growth. So your plants can't go anywhere. So check in, think of if maybe you use some sterile soil or you need to fertilize a little bit, and that should take care of it. Okay, everyone. So now we are to our Q&A part, and please feel free to ask questions. I want to be sure that we get everything answered that we can. Definitely in gardening, there is no such thing as a stupid question. This is one of those things, if you're wondering about it, other people are wondering about it too. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then feel free to type in some questions. Let me know what your thoughts are. But hopefully this went over a lot of what you were looking at. For those of you who joined a little bit late, just to reiterate, I will be sending out a recording. You should have that tomorrow. And with your recording, you'll have copies of the slides. I'll give you access to those three. I think there's 3 charts to help you with your seed starting. And you'll also have my contact information. And I really do encourage you, reach out. Don't feel like you're struggling or being unsuccessful. You now have a team of people here, and we want to make sure that we can help. Okay, so I'm going to go down to questions here. Okay. Oh, Rebecca was saying, so what's a good mix in terms of, if you look at the soil package, it'll say like 10, 30, 20 or 30, 40, 20. Generally, Rebecca, the nitrogen is going to be slightly higher for seed starting. That would mean that the first number would be a little bit larger on most packages. In general, if you know it's a seed starting mix, it should be pretty balanced. If you go to a hydroponic store or a grow shop of some kind, they will have blends there too that are specifically for different plant phases. If you get a soil and it's sterile, or if you get a soil and your seeds just aren't growing, those are great mixes to have because you can get those specifically so you can blend them for seed starting. All right. Moving to the next one. Kimberly said, you mentioned that anyone could say a seed is an heirloom seed. Are there any seed providers you recommend? So we carry, I like Baker Creek is a good company. I frequent them and I buy some of their heirlooms sometimes. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange are the seeds that we carry in my shop, and I love them because they're a good company. They treat their people really well. Their seeds have been really high germination compared to some other brands, even their heirlooms. And I find them to be more reasonably priced, and they have a good selection of both classic varieties as well as the more heirloom varieties. There's lots of others out there. Burpee has a really robust seed line. I'm trying to think of some of the Harris Seeds has a really robust line. So lots and lots of good options. Any of those that I mentioned, and most of the larger ones, are going to have a lot of integrity behind their heirloom seeds. So you should be able to determine pretty quickly if they are truly the heirloom seeds you want. Okay. Diane said we saw on Pinterest someone using Christmas lights to start seeds. Is that possible? Yeah, it would be possible. To be honest, I would think you could probably find an LED fixture for $10 that would work better and frankly be a lot more reliable than Christmas lights. I'm coming off of a Christmas season where we had to like run to Walgreens, you know, at 10 p.m. to get the darn Christmas lights because none of them were working. Yeah. I will say if you were using an incandescent type of lighting or even an LED light string, they are going to be more geared at making ambient lighting look good, not being as effective. So, but honestly, yes, Dan, I think the short answer is you probably could. It might not get your seeds to grow quite as quickly. Next question is, what are the easiest things to grow in your first year? I have house plants, but only enjoyed catnip so far. Yeah, so some of the easiest ones, I think tomatoes are pretty darn easy to start from seed. They need some love once they're out in the garden, but they do really well from seed. Cucumbers do well from seed inside and they grow really, really fast. So that's another option. Peppers are pretty easy. You need a little more patience because sometimes they can take a couple weeks to germinate, but they do great. And then a lot of your herbs, basil will come up really well. That's a fun one. Parsley will come up really easily. Cilantro, coriander, those will work really well. I'm trying to think what else I love starting indoors. And of course, I'm drawing a blank now, right? And it's so sad because I was just like planning my seed starting. Oh, and I like doing broccoli and cauliflower too. They're fun to start inside and you can get them out pretty early. So those are a good place to start. Anthony said, do you recommend liquid fertilizers such as fish emulsion for sprouting plants? Generally, unless you know a lot of what's in there, Anthony, I don't. A lot of the liquid fertilizers like the fish emulsion are really fast acting organic fertilizers, which is really nice. I use those often for my microgreens because it gives a really complete kind of nutrient profile, really like that, really quickly. But with your outdoor seeds, I feel like you can still get liquid fertilizers, but I feel like some of the organic ones are a little more tricky. Not necessarily impossible. In my aeroponic tower, I use an organic fertilizer that comes in a liquid form, but it can be a little trickier. I would encourage you, if you want to go with the fish emulsion, then I would perhaps supplement that and make sure you're paying attention to the label and the nutrient levels that's on there. All right, Kimberly says, oh, and I just went right past you. I arrived late. Can you share more info on AbleVeg? Yeah, Kimberly. So we do classes like this, obviously. We also do one-on-one consultations. That's kind of my love. I love working with gardeners one-on-one so I can get to know them, help them plan out their space, help them plan their garden, get them started, and then get them through their season, either if they're new, their first season, or at a much better place with a lot more produce than they did in previous seasons. We also have raised bed kits. We have products on our website, and we will be adding to a weekly Q&A, which I should mention that I will be doing over the growing season, probably starting mid-February. So if you are on Facebook or YouTube, you can find us there. And then we answer people's questions live or if they submit them. So we try to be a one-stop shop for all of your gardening information. All right, next question. Jennifer says, put the grow light a few inches above the plants, then move them as the plant grows. Yes, Jennifer, that's the thing. So they do make hooks, little greenhouse hooks that you can kind of ratchet up or down. You can also use zip ties. Zip ties work great and they're cheap. So you can daisy chain them together as much as you need to, and then gradually move them up. That's an option. So you do want to move your lights. Other option too is you can move your tray. So you can put bricks underneath your tray and start it up high and then gradually lower it. All right, Candace said, when transferring outside, do you do anything to prepare for transplant before moving outside? This is a great question, Candace. And now I'm going to kick myself because we should absolutely have a slide in here for that. Great question. So yes, when you go to move your seedlings outside, you'll go through a process that's referred to generally as hardening off. Plants are, so I'm going to nerd out really quick for a minute. So plants are so cool, guys. They're so cool. Your seedlings are actually capable of adapting their their bodies themselves to the environment so much that if you take them from your cozy little greenhouse where they don't have any wind, no temperature fluctuations, they might die. However, if you put a fan on them and they start having some of that air movement, their stem will actually thicken and get harder to keep them more stable. So generally about a week to 10 days before I move them outside, I cut back on watering a little bit so they're bulking up their root system. I'll turn off their lights, give them shorter periods of lighting, open up the front of the greenhouse, put a fan in there, and then I'll gradually move them outside on a day when it's pretty mild-ish, so that you're not just walking them out into, 0-degree weather, right? But take them out, leave them for 5-10 minutes, bring them in. And then over the course of a week or so, just put them out there a little bit longer so that the plants have time. They have got about a week to get prepared for being outside. That's going to give them a much better chance at thriving once you put them out. Really good question. I'm so glad that you asked that. All right, Risha says, are you cautious about leaving the house with your grow lights on, or can you turn them off when you're away for an hour or two? No, I'm not cautious about leaving the house with mine. They're very safe. They aren't like heat lamps. We do have a heat lamp in the house. We get baby chicks on occasion, so we have a heat lamp that we keep in our mudroom. But even those now have cages and things, so they're a lot safer than they used to be. With the grow lights, I would say even my high output T5 bulbs, which get a little bit warmer, you wouldn't want to like put your whole hand on there and hold it there. But if you tapped it, you're not going to get a terrible burn. They're generally very, very safe. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. If you are concerned, then yeah, you can, if you're away for an hour or two, sure, switch them off. It's not going to hurt anything as long as your plants are getting the right amount of light. Okay, Donna said, what is your website? Can't find it. So it is, I'll go ahead and type it in the chat. It is just www.ableveg.com. So ABLEVEG.com. And you can visit us there. And we have a contact there. And then, of course, if you have any questions about our website, let me know too. Julie said, outside in direct sunlight or in shade? Julie, I'll usually start mine in direct sunlight since they're used to being in the sun. So when I first put them out, direct sun, for most vegetable plants, they prefer lots and lots of sun. So you'll be working them to kind of get them ready to be outside in sun. So I usually will wait till it's kind of a sunnier day and get them out there. And Anthony said, do you use cold frames to harden the transplants? I don't, but you absolutely can. In our last house, had a little pop-up greenhouse that I use. So I would just transition them out into the greenhouse. I did not do a winter garden here this year, but if I did, then I have my thermometer, so I know what the temperature is, my wireless thermometer, then I used that. So yeah. And Kimberly, a cold frame is an actual frame. If you Google it, you'll get lots of images, usually made out of wood. Sometimes the frame is made out of metal, but it essentially will have a door on the top that you can raise and lower. So when it's lowered, it acts as a greenhouse, so it can keep heat in. When it gets warmer, you can raise it up. So that can absolutely be effective. Anything that you can use to transition will help. And guys, don't overthink it too. I think you all now know enough that you'll know, right? If you put especially basil plants are really sensitive. If you put it out for 5 minutes and you're like, it's not looking happy, it's starting to curl, like get them back in, right? Keep in mind, these plants have been cultivated now for thousands of years, and so they're made to be grower friendly. And you should feel pretty good that the information that you have will help you to get started. And don't be afraid to screw up. Every year, I mean, I've done this my whole life, right? And I still have some plants that don't come up, and I've got to do some troubleshooting. And so just enjoy the process. Plant a few extras, give them to neighbors. But okay, so we're right at 8:30. I will stick around if any of you have additional questions, but I want to kind of officially end so the rest of you can go on about your days. And again, please, if you have any questions, let me know. And then the biggest thing here is if you have success, because I think all of you will now, send me pictures. I want to see how you're all doing. And we're here to help you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We offer free 10-minute calls, and that is totally free. We want to make ourselves accessible to you. You're welcome, Kimberly. You're welcome, Risha. Jennifer said YouTube channel the same. Yep, it'll be under AbleVeg. Yep. Oh, Candice, well, I'm sorry your plants died last year, but I'm very glad that you've been able to troubleshoot. So, all right, everyone. Well, I hope to see you in another class soon. We've got lots of good ones coming up, and I think we're scheduled out until April. So we'll be adding some more. We have canning classes coming up, which are lots of fun and make a great complement to gardening. So that we've got herb classes coming up. We have garden planning classes. So by all means, and if you have any feedback for us, positive or negative, we love to hear it. It's always much appreciated. We want to make these classes better every time we present. So please let us know. All right, everyone. Well, it looks like we've kind of slowed down. I will sign off here, but hope to hear from all of you, and happy gardening, happy seed starting. Thank you all so much for being here.